so much. I hope everyone that's attended today has found it useful. And wherever you are, good morning, afternoon, and good evening. I'm Rahan Arif, and a little bit about myself. I've been in the digital transformation game now using Microsoft technology for the best part of 15 years. The early part of my career was dominated by SharePoint, which then transcended into a more broader 365 stack role. I've undertaken a number of projects across a different range of industries. In more recent years, I've been focused predominantly around the Power Platform, and in particular, Power Apps, which is what we're going to be talking about today. I am the CEO of two companies, my consultancy company, Connected People. We do lots of 365, SharePoint, and Power Platform consultancy through that. And I've recently founded a Low Code Era, which is kind of what I'm going to be talking to you guys about today. So I think what's loud and clear and what's testament to the amount of people attending today's bootcamp is that we're seeing significant rise in adoption around the world of Power Apps. According to stats out there, we're seeing 86% of F500 companies already using Power Apps, and more broadly, 97% of F500 companies on the Power Platform already. And this is growing thanks to community events like this all the time. We're seeing lots and lots of Power Apps being built now, and there's many examples all over the internet. And today is a great showcase for different use cases of Power Apps. And these things are very quick and easy to build. And this is the whole promise behind low code. Citizen developers no longer need to rely on professional development skills to build their apps. However, there are some challenges which are out there, and the three I wanted to call out. And I think anyone that spent a fair amount of time building their Power Apps, and particularly Canvas apps, would appreciate it actually takes a lot of effort to build an app which has a good user experience and kind of looks on par with what you would expect from a professionally designed app which you consume over the internet. The second issue which we see coming up, and I get feedback about, is often there are use cases where you want to integrate data visualization capability more directly into your Power App. Of course, there's ways in which you can achieve that, some of which have been described today, linking to Power BI namely. And finally, there's just some use cases out there which are quite daunting to accomplish inside of a Power App. These are very specific, perhaps niche enterprise-grade scenarios where you're trying to do something complex, and perhaps the existing controls that you get out of the box aren't quite what you need them to be to realize that particular use case. And the solution to these issues is something called PCF code components. And PCF code components is essentially an extensibility framework for professional developers to create these custom interfaces and experiences. But the key part is that last bit. These experiences which are created by these professional developers are designed to be used by citizen developers. So PCF code components, when you hear that phrase, it can be quite scary. You automatically think, okay, this is some sort of technology, which means I need to know how to code to leverage this. This is very much a session for citizen developers. And the point I'm making here is that the heavy lifting of creating these code components is done by professional developers, but the benefits are consumed by your citizen developers and your end users. Think of these as new Lego pieces to build your Power Apps with. So you've got the out-of-the-box Lego pieces, your existing first-party controls which you can use to build your Power Apps, and these are what Microsoft give you. Your text box, your image controls, your gallery. These are all first-party controls which Microsoft have built on this same framework, which they then opened up a couple of years ago to professional developers to go ahead and start building their own components from. And what we can now do is really benefit from that, just like other parts of the Microsoft stack have done so in the past, whether it's SharePoint through web parts or Power BI through custom visuals. We now are starting to see a healthy ecosystem of these add-on components, as I like to refer to them, which allow you to do more. And today, my goal is to really demonstrate the power of these to take your Power Apps to new heights, which you might have not thought were possible before. And before we get into that, you might be wondering, okay, so where do I get these code components from? There's actually two sources. One, and it's been out there for a while, you might have heard of it, it's called the PCF Gallery, and this is a community-driven universe of these things which you can just download and import into your environment and immediately start using inside your apps. Now, on the PCF Gallery, if you've ever been there, and I'd advise you to go there, you will find a whole heap of these components to anything from things which improve your UI to, as I've got it on the screen there, something to do with a fancy Star Wars effect for your app, if that floats your boat. And increasingly now, we're also starting to find third-party providers whose job it is to build these components to a professional standard and have these supported. And this is where Low Code Era has come from. What we've done over the last 18 months is really look at what would make a difference to the kind of use cases that are typically involved out there in the enterprise, and figure out what code components would add value to these scenarios. And we've come up with an ecosystem of about 30 of these components. And what I'm going to be doing over the course of the next 40 minutes or so is demoing 5 key use cases where these code components really add value. And hopefully, in the course of these 40 minutes, you'll be able to really appreciate what these code components might be able to do for you and how you can integrate them into your app building scenarios right away. And I just want to re-emphasize that point, and I'll probably make it 1 or 2 times again before we finish up today. These are things which you can pick up right away and integrate into your apps straight away. You don't need to be a professional developer. These are built for you to use in the same way that you would use out-of-the-box controls in Power Apps. So the 5 use cases we're going to be covering off. First one is how code components can be used to deliver really compelling user experiences inside your Power Apps. And this goes, over and above perhaps what you can achieve with lots and lots of work that you can put into your Power App today. The next use case is about integrating data insights directly into your Power Apps without any sort of third-party dependencies or dependencies on Power BI to achieve that. The third area, which I'm going to be demonstrating, and it often comes up, the promise behind Power Apps, as we've heard today, is that if you've been building Excel spreadsheets, or you have typically still many business processes which run on Excel, Power Apps is the next step up. And what you want to be able to do is deliver Excel-like editing experiences which your users are comfortable with. And again, this is another key thing which opens up in this code component world. The next thing, in fact, the next 2 are more niche scenarios, but quite common in most businesses today. Interactive roadmaps, these are things which are produced in every business pretty much today. And one of my favorites is Kanban processes, which can be used for lots of different business problems. I just want to demonstrate how you can use code components to really bring that to life. So what I'm going to do now is jump into a series of demos, and along the way we'll also unpick some of those demos just to see what's going on behind the scenes. And feel free to ask your questions as we go, and hopefully we can pick them up towards the end. So I'm going to try coming out of my presentation and go into my browser. And to demo this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump onto lowcodeera.com, which is the website where you can get these components from. And what we've recently done is made this test drive experience available. And this is what I'm going to be jumping into right now to launch my demos. So what you're seeing here is a Canvas Power App. And this is what I'm using today to demonstrate the 5 use cases which I was referring to earlier on. The first one of which was about creating compelling user experiences for your end customers. So this is a Canvas app right in front of you at the moment. This was created using a combination of out-of-the-box controls which you get today in your Power App, plus some of these code components which I was referring to. Let's talk a bit about delivering compelling user experiences. I'm just going to launch this car showroom app. And what we'll observe when this app loads is, okay, this is just a trivial use case of a car showroom with lots of fancy cars, which I'd love to own, but probably never will. And there's a whole bunch of things going on this interface, which, you know, some of which you can build today. But the point I'm trying to make here is, you know, this is an example of a flyout menu, which is a code component. And in a minute, when we unplug this, we're going to see how some of this is put together very quickly. This middle section here, you might see it as a gallery, and it is a gallery, but within that gallery, we're seeing these card components. And again, this is one of the low-code-era components which you can leverage to really create a fancy UI very quickly. And you might also, for the eagle-eyed amongst you, notice that these are not Power App standard buttons which are on the interface. These are some components, again, designed to just gloss up the app very easily. We've got icons here, which are non-standard icons, and a few more features which you'll see as I'm going through this. So what I wanted to do was just go into a blank Canvas app for a second. And you're all familiar with the Canvas interface by now, but what you might not be aware of is that you can start using code components to augment the controls which are available to you natively inside of Power App. So I think the guys earlier on today have done a very good job with their hints and tips, running you through many of these controls and on what you can achieve. But actually, there is another section which opens up to you called code components. And I'm not going to cover off how you download these. As I said, there's various sources where you can get hold of these code components. And it's no harder than downloading a zip file off the internet from wherever and importing that zip file into the solution area of Power Apps, which I'll just quickly go to signpost it, those that may have not wandered over to it previously. So it's this area here, solutions. You get your zip file and you simply import that zip file in, which contains those code components. And once you've done that, they become available for you to use inside of your app. And what I'm going to do right now is, having imported in the library of low-code era components. What I can do is come over here, and I'm just going to quickly demonstrate the import and usage of a couple of these UI components, which we saw on that app a few seconds ago. So let's start with the low-code era card component. And this becomes available, look, alongside all the other controls which are here. Your text label, your input controls, your buttons are all here. And in this section now, your code components become available. I'm just going to drag that onto my canvas. And just like any other control, you will start seeing properties on the right-hand side. This doesn't look anything special at the moment, and I need to start completing some of these properties. So what I'm going to do is, let me think of a scenario. I'm just going to make a bit of a dream holiday app, or begin to do that. And to do that, I'm going to need to go to the internet and grab some content. So some images. I like unsplash.com. Don't have to worry about anything copyright. Let's find a good picture of Dubai. Okay, that looks good. I will copy the image link, come back here, and one of the properties that I'm looking for is the image URL. So I'll just bang that in there. And you can see now that image is rendered over there, and this card component is immediately starting to take shape. So let's just complete a couple of other properties here. So there's something called tag text holiday. I'm really rubbish at spelling, so please forgive me for any typos that I make in the course of rushing through this. Tag icon. A lot of our components link to a open source library of icons called Font Awesome, and you pretty much have an icon for everything. So I'll just put a picture of sun, and of course, most cards you'd expect to see this area at the bottom here used for some text. Now, I haven't got much of an imagination, so I'm just going to go back to Google and just type in Dubai, and okay, this looks good. I'll just take a bunch of that and come back here. And what I'm looking for now is a description property. And of course, you can use the properties on the right-hand side, or you can use the properties up here. So here we are, description, and hopefully that will paste straight in. Okay, so happy with that. We can just change the tag font color here. I fancy a bit of red, so you can see that changing straight away. Now what I'm going to do, just like any other control, you can copy and paste. I'm just going to copy and paste that, and I don't know, what do we fancy now? Let's go for Miami. So back to my friend Google, and in fact, let's grab the image first. Shouldn't be too hard to find a nice image of Miami. Okay, looking good. Let's go for that one. Come back, change the image up here, and boom, you can see that. No property is the positioning of the image. So a lot of these are out-of-the-box properties which instantly allow you to change the look and feel of that app. So you can position the content in different ways. So I'll just copy and paste that just so you can see some of the differences that are going on. But of course, this is meant to be Miami. So let's now change this to Miami, and let's maybe change the font size of the title and this one to 18. So very similar properties to what you see on other controls, except these are applied specifically to this card in this instance. One more feature of this, got a description on here. In fact, getting carried away now, but let's just copy and push that into there. We can also, for those of you that are comfortable with HTML, just embed some HTML tags. I'm just making that chili for Word, hopefully bold, and you can see that formatting gets applied to the card straight away. So I haven't had to work very hard, especially with Google's help, to very quickly create an interface of cards on my app. Now, in real terms, you'd probably put this card component inside of a gallery, as I demoed in the car showroom app, to have that repeating effect, and then wire up these properties to a dynamic data source. So instead of me copying and pasting in all this text here, it would actually be using Power Effects formulas up here. So things like this record dot description and things like that. And again, these work just like any other control in that they can be bound to dynamic data sources, and it's the same Power Effects expressions that you would be using in any other control to do what you need them to do. Let's try one more to give you an indication of how quickly you can change the look of your app to make it feel a bit more professional. So let's attempt now to get our navbar component working. So again, I've just added that to the code component section, and let's just make that a bit smaller. So very much starts off blank, and in this case, what I'm going to do is this actually expects to be bound to this items property, and then again, it's the same items property that you see in other controls, be it a gallery control or a data grid, which you can use. Fundamentally, it's expecting a table input to drive this. So what I'm going to do is, to help me out here, is I'm going to go to this area, docs.lowcodearea.com, where you can see documentation and quite frankly, copy and paste code for getting you going quick with our components. And I'm just going to go to the vertical navbar, and there's lots of copy and paste samples for Power Effects code on here. And I'm just going to take this code here, and I am going to paste it in here. I'm just going to make a slight adjustment to speed this up. I'm not going to bind it to a collection. I'm just going to open up a table, and what this table is doing is defining effectively the contents of this menu. So we'll come back to that in a second, but you can immediately see now that I've got a data source in here which defines the contents of that menu. It's immediately on here now. Because I've copied and pasted this, it's nothing to do with this holiday app, which I was beginning to build. I'm not going to get to complete it. But this is just to show you here, this menu, you can add it on, and within a few seconds, you get something really dynamic on your app, which is collapsible, expandable. And again, you get a bunch of styling properties on the right here. So comes with a whole bunch of themes out of the box, which some which require you to change some of the other properties like font colors to make the text more visible. Just very quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on going through the Power Effects, but essentially all it's doing is defining each menu item and sub menu if you need to, because you'll notice some of those have sub options. And you can see all of those represented here. Since it was a holiday app, I'm not really liking the color at the moment of this. So I can go back to our friend Unsplash. And okay, let's stay on Miami. Let's take this image, copy this back, and this control here, the vertical nav bar, should have a image URL property, which again, you can see now I've got a nice little background going there, and let's just change that to something else. Let's try that. Okay, that's starting to look a bit more like a Miami sunset. And finally, let's just change the icon and font colors to white. And there you go. I could go on. There's probably about 10 UI components which you can drag straight onto your surface to really expedite your efforts in creating a nice looking app. And I'm sure as we go through some of the other demos, you'll start noticing some of those UI bits. So code components, a real silver bullet for creating stunning user experiences inside of your Power Apps without you having to put that effort in yourself. It could take you hours, days, weeks, sometimes months, or impossible to create some of these effects, which you see in some of these code components. So you can really save yourself some time. On to the test drive again, and I'll just go back. Need to close down some of this stuff. I don't think I need any more images. So I'll just come back here. And the next area we're going to talk about is data visualizations. Now, this is something which, if you've ever built your Canvas apps before, say for a very basic line chart, and I think a bar chart, column chart, and a pie chart, you can't really do much else natively inside of your Power Apps. So let's go to our next demo, which is the sales dashboard one. And what this really demonstrates is the power of having native data visualizations available inside of your Power App. So what you're seeing here isn't something embedded or an iframe or something from Power BI. These are real components, as you've seen in a few minutes, inside your Power App. They're fully interactive, so you can click on these legend items to filter stuff in and out. You can do things like turn on dark mode. You can hover over stuff and see keys. You can even, if you've built the functionality, update your data in real time. So I'm just updating that grid there, and this changed in real time without any delay. So what you've done there is really brought together what Power Apps has traditionally been great at, which is data manipulation and capturing data and editing data. But now what you've done there is brought together the visualization all into one user experience without interrupting the user flow in any way. And that's the real benefit of native and integrated data visualizations. So if I go back, these visualizations can go in any Canvas app, tablet, or for mobile. So this is the same app, but in mobile view. So no different. And there's another example here that I've got, which again shows how you can integrate data visualizations into a real use case. So this is a a sample risk management app, which allows organizations to log their risks across different departments. And you can see, this may have been done typically in Excel or a very basic Power App, but now you can really bring the use case to life through the analytics embedded inside your app. I think here you can also log a new risk. And as you're interacting with the different parts of the app, here I'm flipping between different departments, and you can see dynamically these visuals on the right are changing. And actually, there's a whole bunch of chart visualizations which Low-Code Era makes available. I'll just launch this app. I think upwards of about 12 different chart types. I'll just quickly spin you through some of these. So this is your column charts, and you can turn on dark mode on each of these. Lots of different effects and configuration options you'll notice as we pass through these. Here's an area chart. Mixed charts where you have more than one axis to plot or combinations. Pie charts. One feature which I didn't call out earlier on, and maybe I can point it out now. With code components, you can program any logic, so we can also allow users to download these charts as images if they need to as well, or download the underlying source data. So that's pretty instant, and that's opened up as an image, which is great. I think we also have heat maps and scatter charts. So lots of different use cases which can be catered for using these code components when we're talking about data visualization. What I'm going to do now is close that down, and just like before, I'm going to attempt to, from scratch, just illustrate how easy it is to build one of these chart components from scratch. So just like before, let's go grab a code component, and this time let's go for a bar chart. And let's drag it onto the canvas. So as expected, it comes off blank to begin with. And again, just like before, I'm going to go over to this area called docs.lowcodeera.com. And I'm going to go over to the visual section, and just going to go to bar charts. And here we go. I'm just going to grab this code here. And I'm going to come back here. And again, it's expecting an items property. I'm just going to whack that code into here. And again, like before, you can either bind it to a collection which you then reference, or if you're smart enough, you can just add that to a table expression. And here we are. We now have a chart on our page with very little effort. And if we look at Power Effects here, hopefully you can see it on the screen. It's a very simple structure. It's JSON, and all it's expecting are key value pairs of label and value. And you can change those to see those immediately impacted. And you can, of course, start doing things like setting these properties. Probably the one that has the most dramatic effect on the chart is or in this case, there's actually a couple, I would say, that have an effect. You've got the background image options, and you have the theme option, which allows you to choose from predefined colors which we have available. So hopefully you can see these changing. Let me just go back and see if I can find an example where, yes, okay. So what I want to do is I actually want to create a stacked bar chart, because that was a bit boring, that example, I must admit. So let's go here, and this time I am going to actually generate the collection, which I've just pasted in, bar chart group, and I'll just quickly press play to get that collection into memory. It's now there, and again, I'm just going to be lazy and copy and paste this one. But this time, the items property, I'm going to set it to call bar chart group, and I'm just going to make sure I've initiated it, which I've just done there. And now we're seeing an actual versus budget scenario in this case, and we can start doing some other things to it just by changing these properties. Now, in practical terms, you wouldn't be hard coding your data in. It would be a very uncommon scenario to do that. So what I'm not going to be covering today is how you can actually bind any chart to any data source which is available in your Power App. So if it's SharePoint, if it's Dataverse, if it's Excel, wherever your data is. I think we had a session earlier on which was looking at different connectors. As long as the data can come through to your Power App, you can bind it to any of these components, including, of course, these chart components. Okay, so that's how you can get chart components natively into your Power Apps without depending on anything else. We're now going to move on to the third of the fifth scenarios, where we talked about creating advanced data manipulation or editing scenarios, which is something people are very used to doing in Excel, and that's why Excel is still very, very much used in most businesses today, and it's what people are comfortable with. What I'm going to jump to now is this demo called Power Grid. What I'm demonstrating here is the power of this component, which allows you to deliver an Excel-like editing experience to your end users. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's being able to do things like filter your data. So in this use case here, I've got a whole bunch of records of, I think it's different apps on the App Store. I think there's over 1,000 records here in this grid. And this is a Canvas app, of course. And what I'm able to do is just filter on different headings or filter them out in this case, just to see that changing. And this is not using anything outside of this grid to do that. It's just using the filters. So there's other interactions like being able to sort. If I click on the column headers, you can see that functionality right there. If I wanted to have a more sophisticated filtering experience where I could filter by multiple columns, then I can do that here. Just flip that open, and now I can, for example, filter on all the apps which have got a 5-star or 3-star and above rating in this case. So just flip those back on, hide that out of the way. I've got a search here. So I guess I should study the data source a bit better to find something. So yeah, I saw a couple of recipe line items there, and they're appearing there. I can do other things. I can, if I wanted to group by category, I just drag a category up there. You can see now, really nice collapsible experience of the data. This grid has many features, and I'm just glossing over some of them, but this is what people are used to in other places, pro-grade apps over the internet, or Excel. Now, I mentioned Excel, probably my most favorite feature of this grid is you often want to be able to bulk edit your data where you've got lots of rows and you need them to be the same value. And of course, you can use copy and paste, but one of the best features of Excel, which we take for granted, is that ability to drag down and copy and paste those values right down. So we can use this fill handle, and you can see right there, within a few seconds, that has copied and pasted itself downwards. Again, these are, you know, massive time savings for your end users, particularly when they're trying to solve certain requirements. Again, this grid can be bound to any data source, Dataverse, SharePoint, SQL, Excel, and you can start using that in your apps against those different data sources. Very quickly, let's try demoing this. So start here from blank. And in this example, in fact, I will look to quickly connect to SharePoint and same list. Then I'll come back here, back to code components. This time I'll throw in the power grid. And I'll add the power grid onto the screen. Okay, it's asking me for a data source. I've just added that to my app. And there you are. Just like any other control, by magic, you can immediately start seeing your data on the screen, and you can start, again, toggling with some of these properties to change the behavior of what you're seeing on your screen. So again, I won't go too much further into this because I've got 2 more demos to quickly run through, and I'll hopefully want to leave you a bit of time to answer your questions as well. So let's move on to the next demo. The last 2 demos, as I said, are more kind of enterprise scenarios, which are common in most businesses, and we just want to demonstrate how code components can be used to deliver against those as well. So back to the test drive, and we're going to talk about roadmaps. And let's start with this technology roadmap demo. So roadmaps are something, you know, program managers, project managers, product managers in a business need to produce all the time, and typically they do this most often in PowerPoint, and then they present these out to their stakeholders. People are using tools like, you know, Monday.com or Miro and so forth to do these types of requirements today. What we wanted to do was bring some of that capability directly into a Power App, which people could then use and enhance using Power Effects to really glue them together against their own data and their own business logic. So the great thing about this component is it allows you to flip between these different timescales to look at the data. And as I'll demonstrate in the next example of the product roadmap, not only is this a visual to look at your roadmap, you can actually manipulate your data in real time by dragging and dropping the different artifacts around your component. So we describe this as a next level component where you have full fat interactivity with it to not only look at the data but manipulate that roadmap. So you can just imagine if you're on a Teams call with your team, you can make decisions together and adjust these different aspects of your plan. And again, one of the great things about code components is that you can use them in isolation, like I've been demonstrating, or you can start pairing them up together to create real compelling enterprise grade experiences. So this is the grid again, and a change here will ultimately impact what you see here, for example, on this. So actually daisy chaining these components together really gives you even more power. So just like before, I'm going to jump back into our app, and I'll keep this one very brief, and I'll flash up this Excel for a second in this example. So it's something I prepared earlier on. This is the data source which I'm going to import in a few seconds. Kind of no surprises here. This is the data which I'm going to plot in a second. It's got, you know, your task name, start date, end date, some level of categorization on it. And we've also got some colors which we want to use to plot this from. So I'm just going to minimize that, go into this screen, come over here. The drift now, hopefully, look for the component, make it available to your Canvas app, put it on here. Now, what I need to do first in this case is get my data source into my app. So I'm just going to do an Excel data source this time. Probably not something you would do in practice. So just go here and choose the table. And what I now need to do is choose the data source. And it's kind of partially plotted for me already, but I'm missing some configuration. So what I'm going to do is come over here, come down to properties, and let's start adding some of these things in. So start date, I think I've got a column called start date. Let's use the IntelliSense to help me. Okay, great. Start date. Okay, that's that one done. End date. Great. And let's just quickly work our way through. Main category. And subcategory color. Okay, nearly there. But you can see it's pretty much there now. Main category color. And I'll leave that one out in the interest of time, but we've got it. We've got our roadmap on the screen, and then we can do things like show the main subcategory or not. You can adjust the time scale. These are all properties which are available to you in your Power Effects code to reference. So here's how to create a roadmap very quickly. And last but not least, one of the ones we're really excited about, which you couldn't really do nicely in Power Apps before. I think if you know what you're doing, you can create a Kanban experience using a gallery in Power Apps, but what we believe we've created here is something truly interactive, which your users are going to really love. So let's look at a couple of use cases, in fact. So if you're a sales team, you need to manage leads, prospects pretty early on. And of course, people use commercial software to do this today. But wouldn't it be great if you could really have a fully functional Kanban board to build off in your Power Apps? And that's what we've created here. So you can see the different boards, and it's fully interactive. You can drag your stuff from left to right. You can click on an item. You can add new stuff or edit. So if I click on this one, I'll just quickly add some content. Let's do that, choose a color, hit save, and boom, you can see that card instantly got added to your surface there with some options. So this is a sample template replicating a very basic sales process. The idea is to qualify the lead, hopefully right the way through to them becoming one of your customers. And I think we've got one more example of our Kanban board, which is this one up here. So if you're in an agile team, you'll appreciate this one, where you need to do a team retrospective. And again, that's a good candidate for a Kanban board where you can drag stuff into different categories based on what your dev team's feeding back on. So just like before, we can do that. And just like the other demos which I made earlier on, this is no different to the other components where you drag it on, make it available, and configure the items properties to get that rendered onto your screen. So I'm not actually going to demo the wiring up of that one. Maybe we'll do that another time. I just wanted to close and tell you, code components aren't, a thing which is done for the sake of doing things. I've hopefully shown you a lot of things today which open up possibilities in your minds over what's possible. But customers around the globe are beginning to use these in their Power Apps, and I just wanted to close with a case study of a customer in the construction industry here in London, who is using some of these components to transform the construction industry. Use case is that they are producing detailed cost estimates for buildings, new buildings, existing buildings. When clients want to build stuff in London, they need to know how much it's going to cost, and there's a whole bunch of detailed information which goes into putting those estimates together and really understanding, is what's being done cost effective. So this is an example of using these code components to really transform what you can do in Power Apps to deliver against a real end customer requirement. So you'll now be familiar with some of these components. This is one showing a whole bunch of projects. You can see the navigation bar here, and this is an integrated Power App, which is a bit of a game changer for this industry, because they can have all of these analytics inside of an app now. They can benchmark all these different costs, parameters that they have for their projects against other projects, and they can really get a view of what's going on with these fine details that they couldn't do before. And of course, the real feather in the cap is you can imagine in something like this is tremendously complex in the amount of data that is collected. These guys collect over, I think, 1,700 data points in across different Power Apps. And this really streamlines that whole process of collecting that data and visualizing it all in one place. And not only that, their customers can then go in and consume that information all in one place inside of a Power App, and all that business logic which governs access and security and what they end up seeing is all in one place. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of that solution in practice in real life. And that's it. We started a bit early, so I wanted to make sure I kept it to an hour and left hopefully a bit of time for your questions. So Raz, I'm in the dark here, so I don't know what's going on Teams. Any questions from anyone?
Hello there. Yes, definitely. So there are a few questions here. So Derek is saying, referring to, I suppose, to be able to patch back these draggable changes to the data source, perhaps is on the on-change. So they're wondering how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much all of our components come with this on-change property. And if I just go back to here and maybe pick the example of the roadmap. So what you would do to write these changes back to your data source is, as Derek suggested, is put in a patch command here and patch back what you need to patch back. So a lot of these components have like an output property as well. So you can actually use that to determine, for example, if I've clicked on this, you know you've selected this record. And you can use that in your patch command to patch back only that record. If it's in the grid, again, there's a mechanism to identify what record or what records have been updated. And just like any other Power Effects expression against any other control, that patch command works no differently.
Okay, so Derek is saying, I think the last time I tried to import a component into Teams Dataverse for Teams app, it was not possible. Does anybody know if this should be possible these days? I think it's not directly related to this session.
Yeah, I can answer it though.
Okay,
I think the answer is unfortunately no at the moment. I think Dataverse for Teams is very much an experience where the UI is quite specific to it. If you want to use components, then yeah, you need to build a native Canvas app. You can integrate that into Teams, and of course you can use any data source, including Dataverse. So yeah, there is a licensing implication in that, but currently code components aren't supported there. Code components are supported in model-driven apps, Canvas apps, and Power Apps Portals has recently made them available as well. But not all components, I would say, work across all those three. It depends on what the maker of that component has intended them to be used for. So that's worth keeping in mind also.
Well, there you go, Derek. There you have the answer. So there is a question by Antonis who's asking, can PCF respond to changes of general app visualization theme, i.e. use default color schemes?
The answer is anything is possible with code. And so if you can get to it from your code, I must admit, we've not tried to get those properties out from anywhere. But if they're exposed somewhere, then you can, the developer who's making the components can make those available. I mean, I wouldn't know specifically about the theming properties, but one thing I would say, and probably haven't got time to demo it here, but one neat thing, again, it's an optimization for saving you time, is with our UI components, we have this concept of a master component. And maybe I can demonstrate it very quickly, where you can see I'm changing the font here. And actually, that font then, if I added on more UI components that we have across this app, would all change according to that. So one of the things we're doing at Low Code Era is integrating themes through a few clicks, which then change the look of your whole app. So there is a way of getting components to secretly talk to each other, and that gives rise to an opportunity to develop theming or use it for all sorts of interesting things if you're smart about it.
Great stuff. So there's a question by Eduardo who's asking, this Power Grid component can export data to Excel?
It can. So it's not a feature which is live yet in what we've published out there, but it will be in about 2 weeks' time. So what we do is we release updates to all of our components all the time. We add new components and new features all of the time. So the short answer is yes, it can.
Right, so there's a question. Hisham is saying, first, great session. Many thanks for sharing. How quickly can you approve load code error test drive experience forms for developers? Also, is it a must to have an O365 email or free Hotmail account, or is a Hotmail account enough?
Right, so low-code data test drive, that's the experience which I was running through today. It's actually available to anyone online instantly, so long as you have an Office 365 account, which you provide us with on this form here. So the moment you plug in an Office 365 account, enabled account onto there, the other caveat is most Office 365 accounts do come with a Power Apps license included, even if it's a developer one. So I imagine a lot of people have a development environment which is available for free. That will work as well. You just simply fill this in, and within less than a minute, you'll have access to the test drive experience. The second point, which I just want to clarify because it was kind of two questions in one, we do have a community plan for Low Code Era, which means anyone can download it and learn it, use, experience all of the components in App Studio. So you just go up here and register for the developer plan. And that is usually activated for you within 24 hours if you want to go have a play.
Thank you. Yeah, fantastic. That leads on to the next question,
sure.
which was related to that, which is by Fadi, who's asking, those components are quite impressive. Are there source codes available online?
So the answer is no. We spent, as you might imagine, looking at here, we spent a lot of time and effort producing these with our team. We also have a team in place which continually enhances and develops these. And I've got a burning hole in my pocket, quite frankly, from the last 18 months. And so you'll find many, many components on the PCF gallery. But just like other products in the Microsoft stack, we've seen, over time, a healthy ecosystem of third-party components for Power BI. We're probably one of the first on the scene with having a commercial proposition for enterprise customers to have these components which they can rely on and get support on as well. And that's the reason why, unfortunately, we don't make our source code available for our components.
So Shabir is asking pro code or low code?
That is the question.
Yeah,
so look, our goal here, and this is kind of the kind of whole place where low code era came from. We want to bridge the gap between low code and pro code in terms of what you get out at the end of it. So although these components are produced by professional developers, and this is where this whole terminology around fusion development comes in, they do all of the heavy lifting, but this is very much low code building. All we're doing is giving you guys as citizen developers more building blocks to build your apps from. And hopefully you'll see these building blocks help you build better apps faster. And at the end of it, what you'll start hopefully hearing from your customers is, they may have been telling you this looks like a Power App, but that's no longer the case with this. This is, we want to create apps which look on par with what you get out there from commercial web software.
Okay, great. So are there any other questions? I think we've answered all the questions in the chat.
Fantastic. Great work again, Raz, on this marathon off a day. It must take huge effort. So hats off to you, and it looks like it's been a good turnout.
Thank you, Rahan. So are you able to, before we finish and wrap up for today, are you able to share any contact details or any information for those people who are looking to build rapid applications using this framework?
Yes. So my LinkedIn handle is there. Obviously, feel free to jump on to lowcodeera.com to get in touch with us from there. But feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to answer any more of your questions and help you out in any way I can. Okay,
so I've put the URL in the chat, lowcodeera.com, if you want to check out those widgets and frameworks to be able to build slick, impressive apps. So thank you once again, Rahan, for showcasing that today, and a great way to wrap up the day, which was dedicated to Canvas apps, which I think really was a great way of wrapping up the event to show the art of the possible, right? And I think that's what you've shown there, is to create commercial, ready applications. And I think this was a great way to wrap things up before we move on to tomorrow's bootcamp, which is more focused on model-driven apps. So once again, thank you, Rahan, for joining us from London. Thank you to all the speakers today who've been sharing their years and years and years of expertise and hours of blood, sweat and tears, cracking their problems to share their knowledge with you today. So look forward for everyone to join us tomorrow, where we'll continue with the Power Apps Developer Bootcamp, now focus on model-driven apps, and then we'll carry on with PCF development and Power App portals the following day. So I just want to thank all the speakers once again. May the power be with you all, and see you all tomorrow. Have a great evening. Thank you.